loved one experiences domestic abuse, call the hotline at 1-800-799-7233.
80% of 16 to 8-year-old sexual assault victims develop a mental illness after.
30% of raped females are between ages 11 and 17 years old. 37% are between 18 and 24. 12% are under 10 years old. Rise up.
There are over 700,000 rape cases in the United States every year. That's somebody's mother, somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's aunt. Rise up and respect our women.
Welcome to Rise Up 2021. Every February, Sierra College joins the international movement 1 Billion Rising to demand an end to sexual assault and gender-based violence. Today, we rise as a community. We rise to educate, we rise to give support, and we rise to get support. This year, we're doing things a little bit differently. We have our scholar athletes and one of our coaches providing facts. We have our Title IX team here to talk about resources. We have Professor Stephanie Code defining consent. And we have a special guest, author and WNBA superstar Ruthie Bolton. She'll be joining us live to talk about her work and activism. Please note, you can send us questions for Ruthie through the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom, and resource links will be posted in the chat for the run of this event.
Welcome to Rise Up. My name is Latoya Jackson Lainez. My pronouns are she, her, hers, ella, and I am the Director of Diversity, EEO, and Title IX for the district, also known as the Title IX Coordinator.
Hello, I'm Cinda Alfred. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the Interim Deputy Title IX Coordinator.
Hello, I'm Natalie Sherrill, and I'm the lead Title IX Campus Advocate and Counselor, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Rise Up includes sensitive content. If you are concerned about exposure to this content, please feel free to practice self-care and take a break or leave the presentation or turn off your video. If you would like to reach a confidential Title IX Campus Advocate and Counselor for any confidential questions or to process the information you're seeing today, please feel free to find our Zoom information in the Rise Up chat. To protect your confidentiality, please don't post anything in the chat that would be identifiable. But we're here for you and ready to meet with you one-on-one to help you through this process. The Title IX Coordinator, the Title IX Deputy, and the Title IX Campus Advocates make up the Title IX team. When a report is made, a member of the Title IX team will connect with the student to offer supportive measures or continued access to education programs and activities, offer assistance from on and off campus resources, provide information about reporting options and the complaint process. If you are in imminent danger, please contact 911. And next, Cinda will be talking with you about what Title IX is.
Title IX is a federal law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex or gender in any federally funded educational program or activity, and it protects all students from sex-based discrimination, regardless of their real or perceived sex, gender identity, or gender expression. Sexual harassment, discrimination, and sexual violence can take many forms. Any form of interpersonal violence or intimate partner violence or non-consensual sexual activity is a potential violation of Title IX or other district policies. And Professor Stephanie Codet will be joining the event later to talk with you about consent.
As Natalie mentioned, you can contact any of us, myself as a Title IX coordinator, the Deputy Title IX coordinator, or a campus advocate to be able to get additional information. You'll see our contact information on the screen, and remember that we're here to support you at every step of the way. You can also find additional information on our new Title IX website. That link is also on the screen. Our new amazing Title IX website can provide you information about supportive resources, all of our contact information, and additional information surrounding Title IX. As far as the next steps go, if you have been impacted or know somebody who's been impacted by a Title IX incident, you can contact in real time one of our campus advocates by clicking on the link in the chat, or you can contact myself or Cinda Alfred or one of the campus advocates for on-campus support and resources. You can also contact Stand Up Placer for off-campus support and resources. And for faculty and staff questions surrounding how to support a student or how to report a Title IX incident, please contact the Title IX team. We thank you for your time, for inviting us into this space, and for giving us the opportunity and the platform to discuss how to empower the nine. Thank you for your time.
People with a household income of $7,500 or less are twice as likely than the general population to be survivors of sexual assault.
Male college students ages 18 to 24 are 78% more likely than non-students to experience rape or sexual assault.
If this is abuse, visit loveisrespect.org and rise up.
If you're talking to your daughters about safety, you should talk to your sons about consent.
Well, hey there, Sierra College. Welcome to Rise Up 2021 and yet another Zoom meeting during this global pandemic. My name is Stephanie Codet, and I have the opportunity today to talk to you about sexual consent. So first and foremost, there is going to be some sensitive content and material throughout this presentation, so please take care of yourselves. If you need, check in with one of our counselors during or after the presentation. We're here for your support. So I teach human sexuality at the college, and in doing so, when we get to the topic of consent, I have all my students who really recognize and understand how important consent is in experiences and relationships. Yet when we start talking about the topic specifically, I often find that there's many misconceptions about what makes up sexual consent. So you've already heard from our Title IX folks on campus, and we recognize that that sexual consent is truly a legal right. In addition, it's a human right and it's a sexual right. And I also want us to recognize how really sexy consent is. When we get sexual consent in a relationship or during a sexual encounter, it communicates how much you respect and care for your partner. It not only communicates that you're there to sort of take care of your own pleasure, but it communicates that you are interested in the pleasure of your partner, as well as their boundaries in terms of what they are comfortable doing and not comfortable doing. It communicates that you are able to have a mature conversation around sexuality and desires and needs of your partners. And so in doing so, it's going to make a sexual experience feel a whole lot safer for all involved. It's going to make things feel a lot more comfortable. And when getting consent in an ongoing way throughout long-term relationships, it's really going to build a lot of trust and intimacy. So what is consent? We live in a culture that unfortunately does not prioritize and offer good comprehensive sex education. And so because of this, we are left with really the understanding of consent being kind of analogous to a stoplight like driving. And so we recognize in this common understanding that red would be no, right? And people saying stop, don't do that. We then assume that yellow, this slow down, would be, I'm not really sure, we should wait, let's take it slow. And this common understanding would then also mean that everything else is green, green light go. So this would be people saying yes. This would be individuals who are not saying anything and maybe laying still and motionless. This might be somebody who's so intoxicated they're unable to communicate consent. This might even include the misunderstanding that two or more individuals go out for an evening, one person pays for a meal, and then it's expected in return that the other person will then participate in and engage in some sexual behavior and sexual experience, kind of as a bartering system or in return. Instead, here's what sexual consent really looks like using this stoplight analogy. The only green is a true verbal, explicit, enthusiastic, and sober yes. There is no yellow. That anything that we might actually think of as yellow is in fact definitively a no, and it's a red. So things that would sound like this are in fact not giving consent. I'm not sure. We should slow down. I'm not ready. I don't know. I'm scared. I've had too much to drink. And each and every one of these statements are in fact true no's. So in the real world with consent, right, when we get educated, we understand there is no gray area. There's not three options. There's only two options with consent. That is a true verbal yes and or everything else is a no. And by the way, no by itself is a complete sentence with a period. It doesn't need any explanation or justification. It doesn't mean let's negotiate, try to convince me or talk me into something. No is just that. It means no and stop. So what makes up consent? I'm going to go over 6 different pieces, and maybe you have seen acronyms or flyers in our community. Maybe you've seen things previously when we were on campus. And so I'm going to cover 6 different pieces, and hopefully at the end of this, you have a much better understanding of what makes up consent. So first and foremost, it has to be verbal. There's a law in California, among other states, where saying nothing does not equal consent. That affirmative consent means it's vocally and verbally given. Now, wait, what? We have to talk during sex? I know, that makes some people feel really awkward and really uncomfortable. Again, in a country that doesn't give good education, we oftentimes don't even have language and words to talk about the behaviors we want to participate in. But here's the truth. If you think the verbal part is the awkward part, and yet we are willing to get completely naked, go body to body, skin to skin, swap saliva and sweat and skin cells and other things, and yet we feel like the talking is the hard part, we probably have our priorities a little bit mixed up. So consent, first and foremost, is verbal. It's enthusiastic. We should hear this sort of exclamation point kinds of statements, and it must be verbal. Consent also should be very clear and specific and concise. I would love if in consent we are using questions such as, can I blank your blank? Can I do this behavior to this body part? And we are talking about what body parts we want to do what with. So again, this requires that we communicate, and I understand how awkward this can be, and practice makes perfect. So I want people asking very specific questions about what behaviors they want permission to participate in. So can I kiss those sweet lips? Can you put on protection first? Do you want to do it from the back? Can I go down on you? Can I help you out of that? How do you like that? Are you all right? Do you want me to keep going? Right? So these very clear, very specific types of statements about body parts and behaviors. The next part is that consent is ongoing. And I think that this is the one that gets missed most often. Now, our sort of example in pornography really leads us astray. It really sets us up for failure. So in a pornified culture, we typically see these scenarios or these scripts, which we call sexual scripts, where a scene will start with one behavior and then just kind of unfold and roll into another behavior that typically ends with male ejaculation. I want you to think of sexual consent less about just getting it once and then being able to do any behavior you like, but instead think of it like a process. For my student athletes in the room who are swimmers, think of it like swimming. right? When we do swimming, we don't just jump into the pool, hold our breath once, get wet, and then get out. And no pun intended with the wetness. Instead, right, when we do swimming, we get in, we move around, we move our arms, we move our legs, we hold our breath multiple times, right? It's this ongoing sort of state of affairs. The same is true with consent. We don't just get it once. Instead, we keep checking in. We keep asking. We don't get to just start with kissy, kissy, rubby, rubby, and then all of a sudden move around to grindy, grindy, thrusty, thrusty, pokey, pokey, right? We have to check in and continuously ask every step of the way with every new behavior. Are you okay with this? Do you want me to keep going? What would you like to do next? Can I blank your blank? The other cool thing with this piece is that consent is totally reversible. You get to change your mind at any point. You get to maybe say yes and then be participating in the behavior and all of a sudden change your mind. Consent can be withdrawn at any point. And in fact, having participated in a behavior at one point in time with a person doesn't mean you have unlimited lifetime access to that behavior. So we continuously get consent and we can change our mind at any point. The next point is that consent must be given in a free way, free willing and mutual. So sex and consent should never be expected, right? Consent should never be something that we feel forced to give. Sex should never be threatened, or we should never feel intimidated. We should never feel coerced. You should never feel like you have to give consent and or sex to keep a relationship together, right? It should never be assumed that because we went out to dinner together or on a date or there was flirting all night long, that a behavior is expected to follow. So one should be freely at their will and on their terms be able to give consent. Now, with this, think about power dynamics. Think about where in our social structure we have people in powerful positions, right? Where are these hierarchies kind of built in to our social structure? And consider an employment setting where boss and employee, and I think that, there's many reasons we wouldn't want this to be the case, but they're engaged in a relationship. Think about a boss who is in charge and in the power position, and then employee. How employee in a relationship then may feel like they need to give consent to get a raise, to get a promotion, to get more shifts. Think about other power dynamics, such as the military and trying to gain rank in the military, and the risk one might take by speaking up if there's been an assault. Think about Hollywood and an actor, actress's desire for a role or screen time. Think about coach to athlete. Think about an athlete's desire to get playing time on the field or make a position. Think about gender and what we do with gender, where we tend to have males where we give space and place for them to be the sexual beings. And in fact, we hypersexualize. And females and female presenting people, we instead say your sexual pleasure is purely for pleasing other people. Right? Think about how that could really influence consent. The next part here is being informed. You have the right to be informed about your partners before you agree to any sexual behaviors. And that is being informed about previous partners, about STI testing, about possible contraception use, right? You should be able to talk about these things, agree to contraception if that's important to you, and then be sure that whatever's agreed to is going to be used in the sexual experience. So you should be able to make an informed decision before you have any type of sexual interactions. And the last part is being sober and aware. And I want to say just a few extra words about this. We live in a culture where we shame sex extensively. We place a lot of guilt and shame. And what substances do is they take away our worry, right? They stop our brain from firing such that we don't worry about how we perform. We don't worry about what we're doing or who we're doing it with. But in return, that really blurs the boundaries with consent, such that people then are so much less able to think clearly, make decisions clearly. We tend to get individuals who become more aggressive and more pressuring. Individuals are less able to communicate their boundaries, and those boundaries become less readable. So while I understand the use of substances, having sex while under the influence makes communication and consent so much more difficult. And so being sober and aware is an important part of consent. And in fact, by California law, a person cannot give consent when they're under 18, too intoxicated, or when a person is asleep or unconscious. And if there's ever any doubt, I say, talk to your partner, say, let's sleep it off and plan for this at a later date. So in the end, you all, a bum squeeze, a boob fondle, grinding, quick groping, penetration, or a crotch grab, any of these behaviors without consent is a crime. In a quick wrap up there, that is consent. I hope you were able to learn a little bit about this topic. My name again is Stephanie Cody. Take care, be well, stay healthy.
1 in 3 women in the military are sexually assaulted. Rise up.
Stop exploiting migrant workers for underrated work. Rise up.
The sex trafficking industry makes $99 billion a year from people like you and me.
For every 1 African American woman who reports rape, 15 won't report. Women stand up, women stand out.